Don't you just love this time of year? If you're a darts fan, Christmas is literally all about the darts. And it has been an amazing World Championship. I've been very lucky to go. You would have seen loads of people sitting in the crowd with these hats on, holding up these as well, because the Paddy Power World Darts Championship is in full flow. And again, as I was saying, what a tournament it has been. If we look at the early rounds, the 128 that started, there's now only 8 that remain. And we've had some really good stories. We've had David Munya, first Kenyan to ever win on a World Championship, the first Kenyan to ever be in the tournament. We had Nitin Kumar as well, who's played in the World Championship for many times from India, and he's finally got over the line. We've had other stories. We've had Cameron Menzies punching tables. We've had Joe Cullen and Mensah Suljovic falling out. Joe Cullen accusing Mensah Suljovic of cheating. But it feels like all those things, whether it was the Wasp or other things that have happened during this tournament, it feels now like we've got to the really serious stage. We're now into the quarterfinals of the PDC World Darts Championship, and someone's going to be the first £1 million world champion in a couple of days on January the 3rd. I cannot wait to find out who it is, but I thought I would do a predictions video now for the quarterfinals and see if we can go all the way from the quarterfinalists to eventually the one that's going to stand tall at the end as the champion. So yeah, let's go through the remaining games. Okay, so New Year's Day, it is the quarterfinals, and there's an afternoon session, there's an evening session, there's 2 quarterfinals per session. The very first one is Ryan Searle against Johnny Clayton. And Johnny Clayton, he's been speaking quite a lot lately about just wanting to be back in the Premier League, and he's now finally back in the top 4 as it stands. Obviously that could all change depending on results. His opponent though, Ryan Searle, he's now up to 13th in the world, and he's done well. A lot of people predicted him to do well because this is quite an open section of the draw, and he has delivered. I think he's won 14 sets. He hasn't actually dropped any yet. No sets dropped, and his consistency has been really, really impressive. He's one of those players that can show up on his day, and then he doesn't normally follow it up. His A game's great, but his B game normally lets him down. So what do I expect from this one? Well, the bookies seem to think that Ryan Searle is actually the favourite here, but obviously Johnny Clayton's been in this situation before. Hasn't made it to the semi-finals, I don't believe, though. So quarterfinals are nothing new to him. I remember him playing Dimitri Vandenberg at this stage in the past. But I think experience is probably going to tell in this one. I'm going to go Johnny Clayton 5-2. I think Ryan Searle's had an amazing tournament, but he's not really been put under it yet. You know, Master Chin potentially could have won that first set against him, didn't go over the line. I think he's going to go 2-2 in the first set, and I think Johnny Clayton's going to nick it. And I think if he goes 2-0 up, Ryan Searle's going to always be catching. Ryan Searle as well, he's one of those players for me. He mentions this a lot himself. He's quite happy normally just to get to the top 16. And maybe he just says this as a coping mechanism, take the pressure off him. But I don't think he does take darts as seriously. And look, Johnny Clayton I think is probably going to get in the Premier League, so maybe he's also achieved what he wants to from this tournament. There's £1 million on offer here. And both of them must be looking at this thinking there's a real opportunity to make the semi-finals here. First of all, to earn more money. And look, Luke Littler the other day, we saw, not very popular with the crowd. The Boo Boys get on him, or he feel, you know, it's time of year when people are getting a lot of bugs, flu, sickness. If he starts to feel unwell, they've got an amazing chance of making the final here and making a bit of history. And then things like the Premier League, which Johnny Clayton could be in, Ryan Searle, you never know. They'll take care of itself. So I'm going to say 5-2 Clayton. I just think his all-round game is slightly better. He's gone along 180s. I think if he tightens up on the finishing as well, I just think he's going to get over the line. I just think that experience is going to tell. And again, I think if it's a choice between the two Welshmen, say Clayton doesn't make top 4, I think they'd go for Gerwyn Price, and I think they'll only pick one Welshman in this. So yeah, I'm going to say 5-2 Johnny Clayton in the first quarterfinal of the day. Now the second quarterfinal, I don't think anyone would have predicted one of these players would be in. Maybe both of them, to be honest. It's Justin Hood against Gary Anderson. Yes, Justin Hood. I actually put a bet against him in the very first round of this tournament against Nick Kenny. I thought Nick Kenny would beat him. I've been proved wrong. And Justin Hood has been unbelievable. Danny Noppert was obviously a contender for the Premier League. Maybe he still is. Justin Hood beat him fair and square, averaging 103 to Danny Noppert 102. So we cannot say that he wasn't put under it in terms of pressure. And exactly the same playing Josh Rock, another one who could be in the Premier League, one of the best players this year on tour. Swept him aside 4-0 and 11 out of 11 on double until the end, where he missed 4 darts in a row and he did 12 out of 16, 75%. But it sounds like he's finally going to realise his dream to buy a Chinese restaurant, and I'd love to go to it if he does open one as well. Now, look, he's never been in this situation before. Look, he's played in many tournaments, and players now, even when you haven't been on tour, have got stage experience. opportunities for players now who aren't professional players is enormous, whether that's through Modus and other tours, the WDF, the ADC, all those other things that are around. He's going up against Gary Anderson. Let's be honest, Gary Anderson at Alexandra Palace, super popular player. Again, I think experience is going to tell here. I don't think Justin is going to get nervous. I don't think he's going to fear Gary Anderson. But the difference is, I think Gary Anderson can have those bursts. I think he'll have a burst where he can average 107, 108 in back-to-back sets. And I think that's just going to be too much for Justin to come back to. Gary Anderson, he talks, he only wants to play darts. He doesn't take it too seriously. He never practices. He says all these things. But I think deep down you can see he really does care. And a little bit like Ryan Searle, obviously they're practice partners. I think he's downplaying his expectations. I think he really wants this. I think you saw that against Wattimena, how much he looked relieved at the end of the game. He was certainly fired up after he beat Adam Hunt, because Adam Hunt said, where's this version of you been? And he hit back at him. And obviously, against Michael van Gerwen, look, that's a big game, bit of history there. The El Clasico of darts, as some people like to call it. He didn't want to lose that one. You could see he was really up for that game. A little bit of early nerves, got broken in the third leg, but he got over the line. And I think he deep down really, really wants this. This could be his last opportunity. And I just think he's going to just have too much for Justin. I just think in that scoring phase, and I just can't see Justin keep doing this. I can't see him keep averaging these 102 averages and 100% on the doubles. Maybe he'll prove me wrong. I said I've bet against him before, against Nick Kenny, and I think I'd probably be foolish to bet against him again, but I've just got to with this one. I think Gary Anderson will make the semi-finals. Right, we're now going on to the evening session. I can't imagine this happens very often. Luke Littler opening the session in the quarterfinals of the World Darts Championship. That's probably not because of him. That's probably more, and I hate saying this is no disrespect to Christoph Ratajski, but Christoph Ratajski is his opponent. Now, Ratajski has had an amazing tournament. I couldn't believe it that actually he wasn't inside the top 32 anyway. He is a top 32 player. He's had a few health issues, had a brain aneurysm, and it's taken a little bit of time for him to get back. But when you're talking about a solid player who's nothing spectacular, but he's got a floor game that's almost the same as his ceiling, that makes for a tricky player. And he's played a lot of those opponents, essentially, that are very similar to him in that sort of mould. Luke Woodhouse, Ryan Joyce, players that the top players, if they show up, they're going to beat them every time. But if they don't, these players are going to be a solid 92, 93 average. And on their day, they might average 98, 99. There's not too much of discrepancy. Look, I can't see him beating Luke Littler. Luke Littler obviously had a few issues with the crowd the other day, but Christoph Ratajski is not one of those players that you think is going to be really, really popular with the crowd. He's not that sort of person who wants to get them involved. He just does his job. He turns up, clocks in and clocks out, essentially. And I think he's quite happy with where he's got. And obviously, amidst all the stuff that Luke Littler's said and reacted to the crowd, it's been all in the news, he still averaged 106. So all these people saying, don't let it affect you. Did it really? Yes, it rolled him up, but maybe that made him play better. And he seems to be getting stronger and stronger, and the pressure's on him. He knows he needs to win this. Of course, this is also a longer format now. We're going up to first to five sets. I just can't see anyone beating him at this sort of format. Certainly not before the final, anyway. And I think Littler's pretty much got this one nailed on. I'm going to say 5-2 again. So there's going to be a lot of 5-2s at this rate. I just think it's going to be too much for Ratajski. I think Ratajski will show up. I think he'll play well. He won't be fazed by the occasion, but I think he'll see this as a big success. He's back in the top 32, and he's not expecting to win. He spoke very highly of Littler in his press conference. I think he's done his job here so far, and he should be proud of his efforts. And then the final game of the quarterfinals, and what a game this is. There's been so many matches that we've been looking forward to seeing. We thought it was going to be Luke Littler going prize at this stage, or Chris Dobey. This is the game that everyone kind of half expected, was hoping for at this stage. Luke Humphries against Jan van Veen. Now, Jan van Veen has beaten Luke Humphries many times this year. He's beaten him in the match play, beaten him in the European final, and you'd argue he has his number. But again, slightly different formats. I think Luke Humphries is going to win this one. I actually think Luke Humphries is going to win this 5-3. Van Veen's had an amazing tournament. He's done a lot better than I thought. He's been put under pressure on a couple of occasions, and he's just backed it up. Alan Suter had him at one point. He was a set-up, and I think he might have been 2-0 up in legs. And Van Veen just can't believe how well he turned up. I think he's still got the highest average of the tournament, 108. And he just seems to be going from strength to strength. Even against Charlie Manby, there was some pressure against him. It went to 1-1 in sets. But Van Veen stepped up. A lovely 1-3-2 checkout. He really gave it some emotion. He's full of confidence. The action looks pretty good. And what really impressed me against Manby is how many legs he was starting with a 140 or a 180. If you do that, you put your opponent under pressure straight away. That's what he needs to do against Luke Humphries, because Luke Humphries has got the experience. I just think Luke Humphries, though, he's playing well. You know, Van Veen averaged 98 in the last game. Luke Humphries against Kevin Dukes averaged 103, and he didn't make it look that impressive. But that's quite a jump up in average, and I think that's just because you expect more from Littler and Humphries. They just have that experience. It's going to come down to it in the pressure moments. I think these two are going to go 2-2 in a lot of sets. It's going to be a 5-leg set. I just think experience is going to tell here. Look, Humphries, he hasn't had the crowd on his back in the same way like he has in previous years. That's because he's not the number one anymore. He's not seen as that number one. And I don't think they're going to get on his back here. Look, he's the Englishman in this as well. Don't know how many German and Dutch crowds are going to be in this one. I just think he's going to get ahead. I think he's going to get 4-2 ahead. It's going to go 4-3, and I just think he's going to pull away. I don't think Van Veen's going to lead in sets at any point in this game. And I think Luke Humphries is a brilliant front runner. And as he said himself, the longer the format goes, same with Luke Littler, the stronger they get. I just think there's too many sets here for Van Veen to beat him. But I wouldn't be surprised if it went 5-3 either way. Right, let's now talk about the semi-finals based on my quarter-final predictions. So if I get this right and it all goes to plan, the semi-final will be Luke Littler against Johnny Clayton. Again, we're going up to first to 6 here, and I just cannot see Johnny Clayton beating Luke Littler over this format. If it was in the first or second round, of course he could, but you're asking a player to turn up and beat Luke Littler over six sets, and this could potentially go 6-5. I just don't think Clayton's going to have the energy either. You're talking about a young player who, that he's the best in the world ultimately, there's no doubt in that. And Johnny Clayton's a fantastic scorer. He's got a good all-round game, a little bit like Rob Cross, but I just don't think those consistencies are going to be there enough. Luke Littler is just going to blow Johnny Clayton away in certain sets. And again, I think the only way Johnny Clayton beats Luke Littler here is if he gets him early. We've said this with Luke Littler before. If you don't get him early, you don't get him at all. And in set format, even if you get a player early, you're never that far away because it's always a best of 5 in terms of legs to win a set. So even if Johnny Clayton went 3-0 up, it's not like 9-0 in legs essentially. If you won every set 3-0, 3-0, 3-0, 9-0, I don't think Luke Littler would come back. 3-0 in sets though, it's a completely different game. I just can't see it. I just cannot see how Luke Littler doesn't make the final here. Johnny Clayton, as I said, if he gets to this stage, the semi-finals, I think he's nailed on to be a Premier League player anyway, because he got to the final of the Masters, losing to Luke Humphries. Did well in the match play. I think he got to the semis, just missing out to James Wade. I think he's done enough this year. I think he made the semis of the UK Open as well, and I do think that will play a part. I think Littler will get ahead, and Johnny Clayton will go, do you know what? I've done my job. If I got to the semi-finals, you said that at the start of the tournament, I'd get there. I think he would have taken that. So I'm going to say Luke Littler 6-2. And it's going to be quite a comfortable one, maybe even 6-1. But you never know. As I said, this tournament has thrown up plenty of surprises. And then the second semi-final, Luke Humphries against Gary Anderson. I'd love to say Gary Anderson's going to win just to see what would happen with this Premier League argument. Gary Anderson's pushing the top 4, so it could be a genuine thing where he might turn down the Premier League invitation, which I don't think anyone's ever done before. But I'm going to say Luke Humphries. It's really boring, I know. Everyone's been talking about Humphries Littler final, but that's for good reason, because these two do dominate the majors. And again, I'm going to say a little bit like I said with the first game, I just think that age is going to play a little bit of a part. First to sixth, I'm not saying Gary Anderson or Johnny Clayton can't go a full 6-5, 11 sets, but I think that's what they need to do if they were to win this. And I just think youth is going to take over here. Luke Humphries, a little bit like Luke Littler, they can just rattle off sets just like that. And even if Gary Anderson got, say, 4-2 up, I just could see Humphries winning 3 sets in a row. I'm going to go 6-3 for this one. I think Gary Anderson's had an amazing tournament. I think he's happy with what he's done. I like Johnny Clayton. I think he's happy with what he's done. And I just don't think, when you talk about a player like Justin Hood or Ryan Searle, this is unknown territory for them getting to the quarterfinals. It's not to Luke Humphries, and I just don't think Gary Anderson can keep up with him over a longer format. There's a reason why Luke Humphries and Luke Littler get this far. I think Luke Humphries feels like he obviously had the spotlight taken away from him, and he can be world number 1 after this tournament. And I think that's just going to set up the perfect final. The final we all want to see. Luke Littler against Luke Humphries. So who wins the final? Well, this is the one for me where I think, who would the crowd support here? Luke Littler's now starting to become a bit of the pantomime villain, but Luke Humphries has been that as well, and I still don't think he's super popular, Luke Humphries. There was a lot of support for Kevin Dukes the other night. I hope the crowd don't interfere with this one. I just want this to be purely a game where the best player wins. I'm going to say Luke Humphries. I think Luke Humphries wins this. Luke Littler's had a lot of expectation and pressure put on him, and you can see with his emotion in this tournament how much it gets to him. And I just don't think that it's really hard to win back-to-back. Only 3 players have ever won back-to-back. Phil Taylor, Adrian Lewis, Gary Anderson. We're talking a decade since that's happened. And I just don't see it happening again. I think the pressure's going to get too much. I think Luke Humphries is going to start better. And where I've said Luke Littler's a slow starter, he can't afford to be in this one. If you do that against Luke Humphries, you go 3-0 down. I think it's going to get too much. I think the crowd will get on his back and the emotions will tell. I think he'll get really animated, really angry with himself. And he's only 18. Look, he's done amazingly well and he proves everyone wrong all the time, even when you think he's gone off the ball. I remember people saying before the match play, maybe he's not given enough effort recently, he's not played in many tournaments, and he goes and wins it. So would I be surprised if it went the other way? No. But I'm going to say Luke Humphries wins 7-3 in the final and becomes the world number 1 again. And yeah, it'll just be a bit of an experience for Littler. I think there'll be a few questions around, how's he going to cope this year? Because he's going to be defending a lot of money in 2026. But either way, I can't wait. This is the best time of year for darts. It's such a shame you haven't got Lakeside after it this year like you used to have in the past. But what a tournament it's been. There's been so many stories. I haven't even mentioned it. But players like Peter Wright, who could be losing their tour card here, same as Dimitri van den Berg. There's so many stories and talking points that are going to come from this. And of course, as I said, the fact that there's someone going to be a £1 million world champion for the first time, that's going to be an important trivia quiz question in the future. So make sure you don't forget it, whoever it is. Thank you for watching. Catch you later. Come on.